get your cup of tea and something to write with. Hopefully, you'll have a great takeaway to build into your week this week. All right, welcome to our YouTube audience. We are excited to be together as always. Thank you. My name is Carrie Donegan, and you're watching Radical Age Reversal, a show on the Win Win Women Network that is about how you can actually age well. So, we can't change your chronological age, but we can change your health age, right? Your biological age. You can actually age in reverse and get younger and younger and younger, which means you have more to contribute to the world and you can live a more full, happy, and vibrant life. So, what is today's topic? We're doing a series this year called Growing Up Instead of Growing Old. And as I say at the beginning of every show that we're doing in this series, I understand that the words growing up can be loaded for you. So we have to understand the definition that I'm bringing forward. Growing up means that you're growing into the person that you were meant to be. And that this phase of life, whether it is your last and final chapter, or you've just gone over that midlife and you've gone into a whole new era of growth and potential, we are taking you as far as you possibly can go. We are giving you tools to maximize this time of your life. So today, after we just did 3 episodes on the 3 key areas where we have to make sure that we are growing into our full potential, and that is money, relationships, and time. If you hadn't had a chance to see those 3 episodes, please go back into either our YouTube channel or the Win Win Women Network and take a look at those episodes, because this one is going to build very much on those 3. But if you don't have time to look at those are fine as well. This one is also very independent in many ways. So let's get started. Today's chapter is called How to Fly a Plane. And no, at the end of these, 20 or 30 minutes, you are not going to be able to take your aviation license and pass it. But what you are going to be able to do is actually grow into your new position as a mentor. And I believe that each and every one of us, once we have hit a certain point in our career and a certain point in our life, whether you spent the first phase, this first chunk of your adulthood as a volunteer, as a homemaker, as a professional, as a wage earner, whatever it is that you spent that chunk of time doing, every single solitary person in the second phase of adulthood should, in my opinion, become a mentor. There's 3 big reasons why I want you to consider this as your new title. Number 1, people who don't feel any purpose whatsoever later in life often find themselves either A, squandering the money that they saved, B, removing themselves from society and sitting in a chair or on a couch and just consuming, whether that's food, whether that's television, whether that's worry, but they go into full-on consumer mode. And unfortunately, our society is kind of set up for this. They consume the healthcare industry. They consume more food than they need and not healthy foods. They consume all this entertainment. Why? Because they're trying to fill an empty space in their life. And I believe that empty space in life is meant for mentorship. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And the third reason that I believe that everyone should become a mentor is that is why you were born at this moment in time. No one is a mistake. No one is an afterthought. No one is extraneous. Each and every person in the world is created for a purpose. And just like a relay race, generation from generation is supposed to move the ball down the field, or it's supposed to see beyond where we can see right now. And what happens is, if we're not taught to become mentors in this phase of life, and some of us didn't have a history or a family that would promote that, I think what happens is we actually drop the baton and there's a gap. So, this moment where you're supposed to pass the baton on to the next generation, the baton gets dropped. Now, do you need to have your own children to pass the baton on? And the answer is no. There are plenty of young people younger than you, just look around, who need your guidance and experience. But it has to be very, very specific for it to be meaningful. So, although I believe you can be one of these people who just sits and waits for the student to come to you, and then when the student presents themselves somehow miraculously, you're going to be able to impart great wisdom and knowledge in the proper way. I think for most of us, we have to actually set ourselves up for success, just like we did in the first phase of life. Think about it. You spent a tremendous amount of time either learning from your parents, learning from those around you, learning from your teachers, going to school, right? And then going into a workplace where you were also guided, mentored, and taught. Now, some of you may say, I had terrible mentors in my life, but that's a precious gift as well. That information has been given to you so that you can understand it and actually edit it so that it can be brought forward. Remember, there's always a kernel of benefit in everything we learn and everything we experience. And extracting that kernel is our opportunity. So the kernel is the gift, but extracting the kernel of knowledge, whether it's from a failure or from a success, is the opportunity. So I want you to kind of take a moment to think about, are you editing those opportunities? One of the things that I love, and I'm reading a book called 30% Happier in 30 Days by Daniel Amen, Dr. Daniel Amen. And what's beautiful about that, oh, so sorry, is that that book tells you how you can look at your day in a really, really cool way. So, I'm going to give you an opportunity that's going to kind of help you along this path of piloting, which is what I call mentoring. I want you to think of yourself as a pilot. And I'm going to give you some P words to follow so that you can incorporate these into your day. So, let's take a look first at what Dr. Amen says about analyzing your day. So, in the morning, the most important thing to do is just to be grateful to be alive. Of course, if we're talking about creating a longevity lifespan and a health span, we have to first be grateful for the fact that we got to this point. So each and every day, even before your feet hit the floor, when you open your eyes, be mindful and appreciative of the fact that you're living, you're breathing, you're moving. There is so many gifts surrounding you, and I would challenge you that you could probably stay in bed for a good long time counting all your blessings, even if you're someone who's living under really, really horrific conditions. Life in and of itself, as difficult as it is, and you could be surrounded by excruciating amounts of pain. We have to kind of dig through that pain and focus on the life itself. And that can be very hard. I'm not saying that it's easy. Okay. At the end of the day, what you want to do is actually go on a treasure hunt, he says. Go on a treasure hunt to find the little blessings in your life, the people that came into your life, the good thoughts that came into your life, what happened in your surroundings. I think sometimes we've turned off our ability to be in the present moment. And it takes a lot of work. Trust me, I am nowhere near an expert on this. The one thing I've learned is that when I do it, it really, really helps. Okay. So I think the most important thing is not necessarily to be an expert in something or to have the ability to do something really well. You may be mentoring people with far more talent than you have. What you have is wisdom, knowledge, time, experience, and hopefully with some mindful training, you have understanding. All right, let's get in the plane. So there are a couple of great quotes about mentorship that I've heard. One is from Sir Isaac Newton, this great scientist and physicist and theologian, who said, if I see beyond what anyone else sees, it's only because I stood on the shoulders of giants. And I think that gratitude is so important when it comes to being able to live a full life. Who are you truly grateful to for where you are today, and keeping those people with you, keeping that team with you? You may have long since lost those people in your life, either to circumstances or to actual death, but those people are in you. Once they've imprinted on you, you carry them forth. All right, those are the giants in your life. Something really important to remember. I remember a quote from Confucius that I'm going to get wrong probably, but something along the lines of, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he will live for a life, he'll last for a lifetime. So that idea that there's nothing more important than mentoring. And it's something that each and every person can do moving forward in their life. So I want to talk a little bit about airplanes and how they work. So what I didn't realize long ago, and I have to just come clean here, I have a tremendous fear of flying. Okay. I'm working on it. I think it's actually much better as I get older and kind of work through why that is. But I've always had a tremendous fear of flying, and I like to listen when I'm on the plane. I like to, so I can kind of go, I don't know, very haphazardly through my life, whether I'm driving a car or I'm sitting at mass or I'm listening to a lecture. My mind will just wander off into a million different directions. But when I'm on a plane, I am on alert and I am waiting for the worst possible thing to happen, which is a terrible way to take a wonderful journey on an airplane, because they are a wonderful way to travel and such an incredible invention. But I remember sitting next to an aeronautical engineer who was a friend of mine on a plane, and he was describing to me all the little things that were happening. And I just thought, that's not helpful because I don't understand beyond the words that he was sharing how that really affected the plane to the degree that it was going to make me feel confident and safe. He did, right? Obviously, he was on the plane. And one of the things that I always remember is, if the pilot is happy in the air, then I should be happy in the air, because he's not going to risk his life, right, to be on that plane when he knows much, much, much more than I do. And I think that's kind of what we have to think about when we think about mentorship. You are a pilot and you bring along with you a lot of knowledge and a lot of people in your world. And you have the ability to actually steer those individuals as they're jumping on your plane, wherever you are in life, and bringing you, and you can take those people with you. And that's where the trust comes in. So I think my ability to enjoy flying always comes to the fact that that pilot is also in the sky with me, right? It's not like I'm in the sky and he's on the ground directing the plane from the ground. And that's what mentors do. They don't sit on the sidelines and send their students, their mentees, their proteges up into the air by themselves. They actually go with them. Okay, so that's point number one. When it comes to mentoring, this is a journey you're taking with people. But the second point that I wanted to make that has to do with flying is that an airplane, although it's the technology is highly refined right now, and planes can pretty much fly themselves. One of the things that happens is they're set on a course. And as they go on a course, weather and air currents and all kinds of things blow the plane off course constantly through the flight. And all of the mechanisms in the plane, plus the pilot, right? And of course, the pilots used to do this all by themselves, and I believe still can without all the automation, have to constantly course correct. So when you're on a plane, one of the things that I learned that's kind of interesting is that that plane, although it's going from like point A to point B, is not flying in a straight line. It's constantly moving off course, and the airplane and the pilot are constantly going and course correcting, going back, going back, going back to that line. And if the pilot wasn't there, that plane could actually just end up missing or going off in the wrong direction and taking all the passengers with it. So, mentoring is like piloting for two reasons. One is you are as concerned about yourself as you are the people you're bringing with you, so that they understand that they can trust you. Building an environment of trust is key. So that's number one. And number two is that you're there to course correct the whole plane. Okay. This isn't about you. This is about gentle course correction, which means that the ability of the people who are on the plane or your mentees are actually potentially, like I said, much greater, but you're there to actually course correct based on experience and knowledge built throughout your life. Okay, this is why it's critically important when you see people who decide to retire to communities and lock themselves away, that we have lost a huge gift, a huge treasure trove of knowledge and impact that was meant to be put into the world, right? People were created for a reason and a purpose. They were not created to wait it out or recluse themselves, right? To pull themselves out of the world. It's not our job to pull ourselves out of the world. When we die, we're pulled out of the world. That's the moment that we're pulled out of the world. Otherwise, we're meant to be part of community, but we have different roles as we go along. So I'm going to give you something that I think is going to help you to step into your mentorship role. And remember, this is not really something that I believe is a choice. I believe that each and every person, whether you're going to end up as a mentor to one or to thousands or to tens of thousands, okay? So it's not about the number. You may have been created to, at this point in life, to mentor just one person or to care for one person. So I don't want you to think it's a numbers game, because it's not. Each and every one of us is going to be given enough guidance and enough ability to take on whatever size group we were meant to take on. So that's really important. This is not a numbers game, but it is a quality, which means that whatever you're giving out has to be the best you possibly can give out. And I would say the number one important thing to understand is that you're giving anything, right? To be able to understand that people are watching you if you're out in the world, and that you have this opportunity when people come into your life. Okay, so I'm going to break this down into three parts. Number one is to plan. Number two is to participate. And number three is to praise. So these are the three P's of piloting: planning, participating, and praising. Okay, so let's break those down real quickly. And we can expound on these as we go through with our Growing Up Instead of Growing Old series. So, planning. How do we plan to be a mentor? I think the first thing that you have to do is kind of be aware of when people are listening to you and what they're listening to. Because we can do a lot of talking and people can do a lot of tuning out. And so I think, sometimes I had a funny conversation with a woman at the grocery store yesterday. So she had all these beans in her cart, and I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. And I thought she was buying like some organic garbanzo beans and some non-organic garbanzo beans. And I know they're like very similarly labeled, and they were like next to each other on the shelves. So I thought I'll just start a conversation, because I've done this before. And I said, I think those are different beans. Did you mean to get them? And I think she took, umbrage against my comment, was like, yes, I like variety. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that they weren't both the same bean. And, anyway, I tried to talk myself out of a comment that obviously she was not having. And I remember I was like, okay, well, maybe I can take the conversation into a different direction. That wasn't working either. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to stop talking. And she kind of snarled at me, and that was the end of it. But what's interesting is like that was not being received, right? Whatever I thought was going out there wasn't being received. But I had an experience in a coffee house the other day where I was like waiting for my coffee to come off, and some people were chit-chatting about something, general. I wasn't like eavesdropping, and other people were joining in the conversation. And I started to talk about the topic, and people started to get quiet and they were listening. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'll keep talking because there seems to be some engagement here. And that's the contrast I want to build for you. Sometimes you're going to put yourself into a position where you feel like the comment is warranted or could be welcome or could be interesting. And you're going to get door closed or closure, or you may even get a little bit of hostility. And that's okay, because if you're listening, then you'll know to shut it down. And, a no or a door close, or even like, someone with a grumpy face isn't going to really hurt you. I mean, honestly, it just wasn't for you that moment. And it wasn't for them, or at least they didn't think it was. And then sometimes you'll get people who will like do a lot of body language, right? Like they lean in, they ask clarifying questions, they smile, or they seem receptive to what you're saying. Those are opportunities and for you to be in your mentor position. Okay. So, all right, I'm going to lean into this conversation because all of a sudden I've got this, open ears. An audience might be too big of a word, but I don't have a plan. So, guess what? My opportunity gets lost because I've never thought through my mentorship path, right? And you're not going to be a mentor in every possible situation. So, one of the things you have to do is actually look back and ask yourself three questions. Number one is, how did I develop from my youth till now? I mean, really, that's a great question. How did I develop? Like, was I shy as a kid and I'm able to talk to people now? Was I unhealthy or overweight as a kid? And now I've kind of figured out, how to eat well and exercise and take care of myself. Was I someone who was interested in math as a kid and now that's become my profession? Was I good at organizing crayons as a kid or blocks or toys? And now I have a house that's super clean and organized and runs really well. Was I someone who could be very calm and quiet and not have a lot of people around me? And now I can actually find myself able to meditate and pray and do, exercises maybe like yoga, or I can lead people with the Sierra Club. I have a friend who's does all kinds of hiking, which takes someone with a quiet mind, an observant mind, right? Like, so what was in her childhood that brought her to there? So I think planning has to be able to observe where you came from and where you went with those things that you were given. So once you find out how you refined those experiences from childhood into where you are now, then you have a mentorship plan. You're going to start to see, oh, I actually have developed this gift and talent for, and fill in the blank, whatever it is. And I caution you not to uh, end up kind of, what's the word? Just relying on the values of society. And that can be hard because it's like, well, where am I supposed to get this list of things from if I don't, Google it, or I go out there and talk to people, or I just look at what the world values, right? And I think that You can be a little bit more contemplative when it comes to things like this. You can look around you and see what brings you joy. I think that's a great thing. There was that wonderful book about tidying up. What sparks joy in your life? There's going to be moments in your day when you've done something or you've experienced something or you've felt something, and there's a sense of like, oh, like a little burst, right? That's dopamine. And hopefully it comes from something good, right? We're not talking about how you feel after a glass of wine or eating a chocolate bar. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, like, you know, an area of your, I'm going to call it expertise, something that actually you worked really hard on to get to. Maybe it's even just your handwriting, right? You wrote down a grocery list and you looked down and said, wow, that's beautiful. You can admire things in a way that shows, like, I obviously wasn't able to write as a small child, but now I can write, and I have valued my handwriting, or I've valued the way I organize something. But I hope you're getting sort of the understanding. From there, pick out one or two things, again, that spark joy in you, because you're more likely to step into a mentorship role in those areas if you yourself really enjoy doing them. One of the beautiful things about the mentorship phase of life is that you get to choose more where your time is spent. So maybe you took a few jobs that taught you some really great things that you were able to take later in life. Maybe you worked a whole lifetime in something that didn't actually fulfill you, but along the way, you could see where it refined you. And in that refinement came characteristics that do bring you joy. Okay. They are in there. Otherwise, I don't think we'd still be here. I really feel like even if you're doing something that doesn't seem on the surface to bring you a lot of joy, the fact that you're still here on the earth participating in life means that you are bringing a vitality into your life. Because if you didn't bring a vitality into your life, even in a negative space, you wouldn't be here because you wouldn't have the vitality, both from a metaphysical standpoint and a physical standpoint. So listen for that. That's the planning. And look, when we first start a job, we may say, oh my gosh, or take a course in school, right? I took that class. I thought I was going to love it. I hated it. I took that job. I thought I was going to love it. I hated it. I moved to this place. I thought I was going to love it. I didn't love it. I bought this type of house. I thought it was going to be my dream home. Ended up being too big, too small, the wrong size, the wrong whatever. Didn't love it. Car, whatever it is. Sometimes we just think, oh, this is going to be great, but I didn't love it. So, same thing with your mentoring. You may think, oh, I can really help people with communication, or I can really help people with planning, or I can really help people with organization, or, um, you know, time management. I don't know, whatever it is that that really sparks joy. And then you start doing this with people and you're like, oh, this isn't fun. And it's not fulfilling. Maybe it's not, doesn't have to be fun all the time, but there's no fulfillment to it. Change courses. It's fine. This is the pilot. You're the pilot, right? You can course correct. You can course correct your plan, where you're going. But you can also course correct for your mentees. So that's the planning part. And then just run with it. So, like, if you're over 50, if you've worked in a career for 25 years or more, if you are retired, you should be in this mentor planning. You should be in a mentorship phase. And I'm not the only one talking about this. There's some great books out there. There's a professor of Harvard at Harvard who teaches happiness, Arthur Brooks, and he talks tons about the fact that this second phase of life is an obligation to mentor. There are so many TED Talks on mentoring. Like, don't take my word for it. Really delve into the topic. The second one you're going to do is participate. Now, participate sounds like an action step, but it's actually an inaction step. To participate in a young person's life, no matter, and when I say young, they could just be a few steps behind you, they could be years behind you. These are the people that are going to be placed in your life that you're going to mentor. The first thing you have to participate in their life is to listen. Okay, we participate by listening, which may feel a little bit difficult for the doers of the world, right? Like, you just told me to mentor. So I've got this plan and I'm going to make these charts and I'm going to set up times and I'm going to book, ways of interacting with these people's lives and yada, yada, yada. But it's not about that, because the only way you're going to find your students is if you start listening to what people need. And so at the beginning and throughout your mentorship career, which is going to last maybe 50, 60 years, you are going to spend a lot of time listening. So if you're not a good listener, then build your listening skills. So that's two. So first, you're going to plan by analyzing what you think is going to spark joy and give you fulfillment. That's the zone you're going to work in. And the second thing is you're going to perfect your listening skills so that your students start being drawn to you. And then the third thing is you're going to learn how to give good praise, okay, and appreciation. And I think this is a dying art. I remember the first time a teacher said to me, when someone says sorry, and you say it doesn't matter or don't worry about it, you're minimizing their understanding of where they went wrong, and you're confusing them. You're basically saying to them, you didn't do something wrong, when in fact they actually did, and you're just trying to lighten their burden. But you're not lightening their burden, you're confusing them. And that was always kind of profound to me, because I thought, oh, wow, here I am thinking when someone apologizes that, I should lessen their burden. And it's become kind of a societal thing. But if you think about it in a way of confusing people, we have a lot of confused people in this world, right? Everybody's changing definitions and parameters, and like everything is messy. And one of the things we know about young children is that they like boundaries. Kids like boundaries. Like, where's the walls? Show me the walls and I'll go crazy within the walls. But if there are no walls, kids actually go into themselves. They get more afraid. They get more shy, because they're like, I don't know who's going to protect me, because there's no walls. All right. So next time someone apologized to you, one of the things they said is, you can say thank you, right? Thank you. I appreciate the fact, I appreciate it, and then move on. Like, you could do it with a smile on your face. You can, you can be joyful about it, oh, thanks, and move on. That's it. Not a big deal. But don't say it didn't matter, because it does matter. And they know it matters. That's why they apologize. The other thing about is how to receive a thank you, right? That's another thing we've gotten confused about, right? If someone says thank you, you can say, you're welcome, or it was my pleasure, or I'm so glad I was able to help you. But give them the gift of acknowledging their thank you, instead of saying, oh, it was no big deal. Because that minimizes you, which means that they're not going to model that behavior, because you know what? I guess it didn't matter, right? And so we've diluted all the good things of the world in exchange for this, not wanting to upset anybody. It's okay to upset people if they're learning. And it's okay to upset people if you're course correcting. And it's okay to accept people if they know you've done it in love and in charity and in goodness and in kindness and in care and in concern. It's not good if it comes out of a place of like evil and maliciousness and hurt and envy and anger. That's all bad, right? And brutality, that's all bad. But being able to accept a thank you and accept an apology gives people an understanding of what good behaviors are serving them. And that's good mentorship. So if you're going to be a good mentor, get really, really good with your sorries and your thank yous, receiving them. Okay. Not just giving them, but receiving them. How does that work in your life? So you want to praise choices and behaviors, not people. And that is a refined skill that really becomes the best mentorship. So remember, you don't have to be the best person in terms of talent. You could be working with people who have much greater talent and ability than you. And certainly, young people are being trained with all kinds of technology and all kinds of abilities that people in previous generations just never were exposed to. So, if we have to be the best at something to be a mentor, there's going to be few and far between. But I would argue that we are all capable of mentoring because, again, we are the plane, the pilot that's course correcting. We are not necessarily being, the the model that they are copying. All right, that's not what a mentor is. A mentor is someone who's constantly course correcting in charity and love and concern and kindness, not in a sense of superiority. And I think sometimes that's where like bad teachers go off the deep end, right? Because they become these strict, mean, tyrannical people, and nobody wants to take their class, right? Nobody wants to be your mentee either if you're going to be like kind of like a tyrant. They want to know where the boundaries are, and they want to know that you've created those boundaries in charity and love. And so you don't say to someone, for example, "Oh my gosh, you're so beautiful," right? Because beauty is fleeting. And what does that mean to them? Like, how do I keep being beautiful? Because you've just praised me for that. So now I want to hold on to that. And I just have to figure out how to be that person. But if you said to someone, in something different, like, you have a great sense of style, you've really put that outfit together well, or your ability to apply makeup is so fresh and clean, or I love those colors that you've put together, that is a better way of praising someone. You're praising their choices and you're praising their behavior. So for example, you may say to a young parent, right, if you've been a parent and you see really good parenting, there is nothing wrong with going up to someone who's a total stranger and saying, that's a really beautiful way that you spoke to your child. Because guess what? Other parents who maybe not, are like floundering their parenting, not only are you praising good behavior to the person who's exhibiting it, but other people around you are like, oh, someone from the outside world is noticing this activity. Maybe I can learn from them too. This is what mentoring is all about. It's not some great TED talk. It's not some wonderful consulting business. It's not starting your own charity or becoming Mother Teresa. It's about working in the space that you've been given to be the best possible person you can be in this form of life. And guess what? This is going to actually extend your life and extend your health span, because three hormones come up when we do this. Our dopamine levels go up and they stay up. Our serotonin levels go up and they stay up. And the gratitude that naturally comes back from being a good mentor is oxytocin, which is the love hormone. And that is really life giving. So, this is something that I think if you put into play, you're going to see a major life span change. All right. So, one more time, just review how to be a good pilot, which is a mentor. You're going to plan, which means looking back at your own life and finding those good skills that you want to perpetuate and work on with other people. Participate by being a really good listener. If you have to work on your listening skills, then by all means, listen to tons of TED Talks, because it is a skill that needs to be developed to go on um, with this charge that you've been given in this phase of life. And then learn to praise behavior and choices, not people's characteristics. It changes everything for them. So thank you for joining me today. I ran a little bit long. I apologize. My name is Carrie Donegan. You're watching Radical Age Reversal, and we're going to unpack this in more future episodes. I appreciate your time. We'll see you next week.